Hello and welcome back to the Outsider podcast. Today I sit down with Ellie Berry. Many of you might know Ellie as the person who has walked all of the national Waymarked trails with her partner, or the person who set a speed record for the Vandeleur Lynham list in 2023, climbing all 275 mountains in Ireland in just over 50 days. In the chat, we talk about those big projects, we talk about her work and her research as a visual artist, and we talk about the outdoors more broadly from a variety of different angles. It's a really interesting conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope you get something out of it too. If you're enjoying the Outsider podcast so far, it would mean the world if you'd share this episode with friends or subscribe on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you're watching this. Thanks very much, and let's dive into the episode. Thanks very much for being here on the Outsider podcast. Thanks for being one of the inaugural guests. The question I'm going to ask everybody to sort of kick off each of the chats is a bit of a broad one, but it's one that I'm going to try and stick with, is what does being an outsider mean to you?
I think it means finding the thing that brings you the most joy. Mm-hmm. And appreciating what the world can do for you. Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like have you ever thought about yourself as an outsider?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And I think in different meanings of the word, in that I feel like in regards to the outsider.ie, a lot of the, I guess, stuff that you publish resonates with stuff that I want to do. Like if I want to know about saunas, I'm going to look at your top 10 list of saunas, those kind of connections. But then also, I feel like the Irish outdoor scene has historically been very small and very niche. And so those were always kind of small pockets of outsider people, being a boulderer 10 years ago. It wasn't that small a scene, but it also wasn't that big.
Yeah, there weren't climbing gyms all over the place,
no.
Or it was definitely a niche thing to be interested in. Yeah. Whereas now you can kind of, it's still very niche, but climbing's in the Olympics now and all this other stuff. It's that little bit more mainstream, and saying to somebody that you're going to go, you're not staying in the pub on Saturday night because you have a hike planned on Sunday is less of a weird thing maybe now than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But so what was your sort of earliest outdoor memory then? Or did you grow up in an outdoorsy house?
Yes and no, in that, okay, so my earliest outdoor memory is going into the woods near Jouse with my parents and climbing the tree roots there.
Gas.
That's genuinely, because we used to, live not too far. But my family were definitely very outdoors orientated, but weren't outdoor pursuit people. So I didn't grow up in a family that went on 20k hikes on the weekend or whatever. But it was always the weather's, well, not even the weather's nice. It's the weekend. You're going outside and you're gonna make weird soups out of the flowers in the garden. You're going to do whatever it is that's outdoors.
No, we were literally sitting in a place that has loads of wild garlic, and before we hit record, we were just talking about foraging and all this sort of stuff. And this was something I actually brought up. Maybe it was on a different podcast, or maybe it was with a friend. Is I think that having a bit of an understanding and appreciation of the plants and animals in a surrounding whenever you're doing whatever outdoor activity it is, whether you're kayaking down a river or hiking along a trail, having some kind of understanding of, the bird song, or that's wild garlic. I think that sort of enhances your outdoor experience. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. Actually, it's funny that it reminds me of the weirdest kind of day I had where I was documenting some invasive species down in UL. So along the river there, they have a load of Himalayan balsam, which can grow, the stuff there was as tall as that branch.
Wow.
I can't do height estimates. 10 feet. It was very, very, very tall.
Yeah.
Like I would walk in it and it felt like a forest. Anyway, very, very invasive species. Has a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful purple, pink flower and these like exploding seeds. And so I was there like photographing it, videoing it for like an invasive species thing. And people would stop constantly and be like, oh, aren't the flowers gorgeous?
Yeah.
And I would be like, yeah, they're this and like if the conversation kind of came up, I'd kind of like talk about how they're invasive and X and Y, and different people would take it differently, but the change of them being like, oh, it's a sunny day, everything around me is gorgeous, to being like, oh, that's kind of weird. I didn't notice that there was initially, so yeah.
Yeah, that's because I was recently down in Killarney, and obviously there's a humongous amount of work going on down there to get rid of the rhododendron, basically. And that's another invasive species that particularly in Killarney is just completely taken over. Like it's a similar sort of story in terms of like each plant produce, like it's a ridiculously resilient plant. Like everyone will remember the fires that happened down in Killarney. Like we were on a boat tour with one of the locals down there, and they were saying how after this terrible fire that like decimated a huge portion of the national park around the lakes around Killarney, like he was out on a hike like a week later or 2 weeks later or whatever, and there was a little rhododendron plant flowering, and it's like the resilience of these plants, and that's how they were introduced, like not 20 years ago, and they've completely taken over. And so I think it's like it can be hard then to like go through and like environmentalism or conservationism can be a little bit of it can have that little bit maybe of a negative sort of vibe or association with it. Like you kind of want to still have that sort of like wonder of like, oh, that plant is beautiful, but maybe having an understanding that like really it shouldn't be here. So it's tough.
But there's a yin and yang, because I also know that when you're on that boat tour, you saw the eagles. Yeah. Which is just like the coolest like species reintroduction that we've had in years.
So it's the white-tailed sea eagle, and there's a couple of nesting pairs in Killarney National Park now. There's a few different eagles around the place. I should know it now. Like we were literally before we hit record, we were literally talking about something on a podcast that you're not 100% on. You're like, you probably shouldn't, but this was the Norwegian sea eagle, and like absolutely incredible birds, and recently been reintroduced in the national park. And like we were on an 8-foot traditional Irish boat, Donal O'Donoghue's company, traditional Irish boat tours. Yeah, it was incredible. It was awesome. If you're down in Killarney, I'd highly recommend doing one of the boat tours. Like it was so good, and Donal Jr. was such a good guide. But these birds, like their wingspan was like the length of the boat that we were on, like an 8-foot wingspan, and just this massive bird, like so cool. But like having a bit of an appreciation, or even just a surface level knowledge of like your surroundings, I think can sort of enhance your, and that sounds like that's more so was your introduction, was an appreciation for the outdoors, as opposed to necessarily like it being a pastime. Yeah. It was more like we can like spending time in the outdoors. Yes. So then like chronicling, because a lot of kids like have that sort of upbringing where they're, I don't know, out and about having picnics, whatever, like chronicle the journey from that sort of experience to now, where you've now definitely built up a bit of a brand, for want of a better term, but like a career basically around like the outdoors. Like what was that journey to where you are sort of now, or up to 2017, and then we can pick it up from there.
So I guess my sport of choice as a kid was horse riding, which you can't really do not being in the outdoors. So it was again that exactly how you phrased it, of appreciation for the space, but not necessarily that same level of engagement. But it did make me, it kept me fit as an individual. And the muscle groups that you build horse riding is actually transitions really well to climbing. So when I started college in 2012, I think, I joined the rock climbing society because that just seemed like a cool thing to do that I had never tried before, and that led me to Gravity in Inchicore,
which you're actually wearing a t-shirt from Gravity right now.
That serendipity. Where I've made some of my outdoors related lifelong friends. And it's also where I met my boyfriend Carl, who I have subsequently gone on all of my adventures with, more or less. So yeah, I think the climbing then, I think it's like a lot of sports. You can't necessarily do your one discipline all year round. Like a lot of people I know might be sea kayakers in the summer and then hikers in the winter or whatever. So they introduced me to more and more of the outdoors. And then somebody, Carl's aunt and uncle, walked one of the Camino routes and were over visiting Carl and just did the best sales pitch of their lives, it must have been, because neither of us were walkers. We definitely liked doing outdoor stuff, but I think it was more of an adrenaline fueled outdoor engagement than a serene pastime. So we went and bought decent shoes and decent backpacks, and that's about it on the quality front. And had a free fold-out map of the whole top of Spain, with just the cities in red dots. No actual useful information. Flew to Spain and walked the Camino del Norte. It was a baptism of fire. To say the least.
A baptism of blisters, probably.
Oh God! I actually found a photo recently because I was looking for photos from that time, and I had brought climbing tape with me, for some reason. And while I bought good shoes, I hadn't bought good socks, so the blisters were everywhere. And this is bright blue climbing tape, and I have taped each toe individually.
Oh my God!
Because
it's bad when.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
So yeah, but it was also, it's such an accessible point, Camino walking, into the general realm of through hiking. It's a really, really accessible way into it, and we just kind of got hooked.
Yeah.
And so Carl was like, okay, well, what's something similar that we can do in Ireland? And he didn't find one trail, he found 42. That was the National Waymarked Trails Registry. And so in 2017, we quit our jobs and handed back the apartment keys and went to walk all 42 National Waymarked Trails, which totaled to a little over 4,000 kilometres.
Wow. And how long did that take?
It was supposed to take 6 months. It took 2.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, I would imagine that quite a lot of the people listening to this are aware of that project already. But when you think back to that time in your life and that maybe the first summer or so of doing that project, what's a memory that comes back to you? And what did you sort of learn from that sort of that experience? What did you learn from doing all those National Waymarked Trails that has directed you now in your outdoor life, I suppose?
First off, if we walk into a town or a village or wherever, and I sit down on the bench and I take off my shoes and socks and I just relax or whatever, I look odd, for sure. I've got this giant backpack and whatever, but also these people are never gonna see me again. So it's, I guess, embracing the outsiderness, embracing the weirdness of it all. And when you kind of get sucked into a big project like that, like days become a week long and weeks become a month and months become like a year. Like trying to remember what, like when you think back to what you were doing the week before, you're like, oh my God, that was like the previous trail. I was on a different peninsula. That was a whole other life. Time gets really, really stretched and like saturated.
Does it almost, because I had this funny thought while I was out on a national Waymarked trail, and I was like, Ellie's been here, Ellie and Carl have been here, like, and there's so many, I mean, all of them, like, you've been on all of them. Like, do these trails just sort of all meld into each other, or do you have distinct memories from different trails?
Definitely have distinct memories from different trails. As more time goes on, like, I can't remember, let's say, every single day of a trail. It'll become like the 3 distilled memories of a trail. But no, I think it's that case of like, it feels so saturated in the moment that even as time passes, it dilutes, but it never gets as diluted as just day to day.
Well, you just experience, like, and even you talking about the like fact that time almost warps a little bit. I think everyone can sort of relate to that. To the, like, if you go out, like if you spend the day outdoors, you just experience way more. Like if you're out hiking all day, just the changing landscape around you and all that sort of stuff, it just, it does just sort of mess with time a little bit. Like, I think that's super cool. That is an idea. And I know that you're, like, you are a visual artist. Like, I'm not saying that to whatever, like that, that just is, it's what you qualify, like you qualified in photography, if I'm correct. So like, you're sort of viewing, you did a whole project around, and like when I say actual project, like a research project, basically. So talk a little bit about, intro that and talk about that a little bit.
So I guess what I was really curious about was how these trails came to be and how walking kind of like, how it changes our relationship with the outdoors. So I guess it was halfway through Tough Souls. 2018 is when I started my research masters. I went back to IADT where I'd done my undergrad because a particular researcher was taking on master's students. I did not know what I was getting myself into, but I knew that he was a very, very like smart guy that I wanted to work with again. So it was a combination of looking at like how trails are developed, how the visuals that we use to describe places alters our understanding of them, our connection to them, like how, so there's this term called imaginative geographies, which I may have described to you before, where there's 2 realities now of everywhere. Have you been to Egypt?
I have not been to Egypt.
Neither have I. But when I think of Egypt, and possibly when you also think of it, there's a very specific image that forms in my mind. Pyramids, camels, sand dunes, that's all that Egypt is in my head. And in Ireland, there are some really, really strong visual images like that. Like, if I ask, to be incredibly stereotypical, if I ask an American tourist what their visual assumptions are of Ireland, it's the curly-haired red kids in front of a thatched cottage with cliffs of moher, green rolling fields. And so I was really, really interested in how that visual representation was even like created, how that became Ireland's identity, and how we document and share information on trails now affects how people engage with the Irish outdoors and how that changes what people want to go and do. And like I was looking at, you know, the Stairway to Heaven on Cuilca. When you look up photos of that on social media or wherever, they're all the same shot. And so it's people going there to perpetuate the same photograph. But quite often the description is of people having a horrible day out because they didn't actually know what the walk was like. Like they just saw this beautiful boardwalk and this like white snaking line that isn't actually boardwalk, it's mostly gravel road. And so they're like, oh, more like Stairway to Hell or whatever. like genuinely.
Yeah.
But people wanted to go there to build this visual identity of themselves and of their connection with nature.
Yeah, it's
so
gas.
it went all off in this whole tangent. And then I got the lovely excuse of using myself as one of my own case studies of all of my photos from walking with tough soles. And so I got to kind of analyse how long distance walking, it's not just kind of driving and going to a viewpoint and taking the picture that you want. It's this continuous line through it all that changes how you engage with nature.
Yeah. It's like, it's very much journey over destination.
Yes.
Yeah. Like you don't do the Wicklow way to get to Cludagall.
No, exactly. Yeah, you don't do the Ballyhura way to get to John's Bridge. Yeah, all of these, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that's so cool. Like what started off as very much you and Carl following your curiosity with starting these 42 national Waymarked trails, 4,000 kilometers of walking across Ireland, then morphed into a little bit more of this. Like in the back of your mind, you had something else going on that was involved in the process of doing all these Waymarked trails. Do you think that distracts from or deepens your relationship to the trails? Like having the sort of thing I had in my mind was, does having a camera and experiencing these trails through a viewfinder or through looking for compositions, but more broadly, you're doing these Waymarked trails kind of looking for something for this project. For this research project while you're walking these trails. Does that deepen or distract from the experience of actually being there?
I think you can let it do either. For me, it deepened my experience because I try to keep that awareness of, sometimes I want to take pictures, but sometimes I also just want to be in the moment. If we were walking for 8 to 10 hours every day, and that, like, obviously from when we would start in the morning to when we'd finish in the evening, obviously very long lunch break in the middle, whatever. And you're doing that day after day after day, you eventually just get tired of stopping to take photos. Like, when I go out and start a trail now, there's always this kind of burst in the beginning, and I let myself lean into it and enjoy it because I'm just excited to be out. And I always get way more photos at like different points in a journey because that's just when it kind of naturally happens. And then if I don't take a photo for 2 hours, I don't stress about it because I'm like, well, I'm going to be walking here tomorrow as well. Which I think is a bit of a like privilege from the format of Tough Souls originally, because it was like, well, if I missed that photo, I'm still going to be out here next week and the week after and the week after. So it took the pressure off in a way. And now I have to be a bit more conscious in that because I'm not walking full time. So it can be easy to like slip into that mindset of wanting to make sure you document everything, because if you're working at the desk for the next week, so I definitely have to be more mentally switched on to not let that happen now. But I think I've built a good enough base inside myself to,
Well, something I've been thinking about a little bit recently is not thinking about using the outdoors, but thinking about it being a little bit more of a symbiotic relationship. And maybe it's not me giving anything back more than it's just I'm limiting the amount I'm taking. Or
just being aware that
So when did that? Because you've probably thought about this too. You're definitely in that sort of category as well, where you're not just using the outdoors. Like there is, from what I get, there's a bit of a give and take or a little bit of a relationship going on there. When do you think that sort of happened for you? Was it sort of like was there ever a time where you began to think a little bit more deeply about the time you're spending outdoors, as opposed to it being, okay, I like going outdoors because it's good for me. Because you also have this sort of advocacy side, and you've done work with Leave No Trace, and you've done work with Mountain Mehel and all this sort of stuff that's far above and beyond what a normal outdoor enthusiast might do.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. So why and when did you start to think about the outdoors more as a?
I guess, so what inspired me to even go and study photography in the first place was I was in love with National Geographic. We would get it every month or however often it came out when I was a kid, and I wanted to be one of their photographers. That was the aspiration. Now I can go down a whole other rabbit hole that's not for today on the efficacy and everything of National Geographic itself. But it was that kind of exploration, that escapism, that everything that I was drawn to so deeply, and then that would bring me off to watch things like Blue Planet and loads of David Attenborough stuff. So I think I grew up consuming a lot of media about how incredible the world was, but all of it had an undertone of, but we have to protect it because it's finite. So I think it was kind of embedded in me for a very, very long time. And I think it must have been 2018. I doubt it was 2017. I wrote a blog post. It's weird. I wrote this kind of researched article for myself for my birthday.
I love it.
Called The Unwritten Rules of Wild Camping in Ireland. Because it's kind of impossible to do these trails without camping. But it's very ambiguous as to what you can do, because all of our access is permissive and there's all these just kind of grey areas. And I just genuinely had been trying to figure out where and when I could camp myself. I just wanted to do right by the outdoors. And so I was like, well, I might as well write it up as a thing. And that just got shared and read a lot more widely than I expected. And I guess there must have been a tone or an undercurrent of my love for the outdoors in that, because then from that I got to work with different outdoor charities and it all just kind of snowballed from there. So I feel like it was always there, but Tough Souls amplified it and sped it up in a way. And yeah.
And what do you think then is if you were to give somebody advice about deepening their connection or deepening their relationship with the outdoors, how does somebody go about doing that? There's somebody already that really likes, I see a huge amount of this where people are really enthusiastic about the outdoors, but maybe they don't know the unwritten rules. Maybe they don't know the written rules.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe education is the answer to that.
Yeah, kind of is, to be honest. Because you don't know what you don't know. And so I try very hard never to judge people too much from their outdoors, because I also did not know everything when I started. And I still do not know everything for sure. Education is really powerful. If you can do something like a mountain skills course, not necessarily a mountain skills course, but so I got it just from volume of being outside with a map, but not everybody can spend months just staring at maps and have it slowly all clicking in their head. But being able to relate the contour lines of a map to what you're seeing around you, those kind of simple things of that kind of understanding. So doing courses like that, or some sort of a foraging course, or a leaving a trace awareness course, something that teaches you about the environment that you're in, and then picking an area and visiting it in multiple seasons, and seeing how it changes and trying to learn what's there throughout the life cycle that it has, is also just really powerful. So yeah.
I love that. It's something that I actually think I said already on one of the podcasts was, and I'll say it again, sure, was and I'm paraphrasing the quote, but there's a documentary called My Octopus Teacher.
Oh, I have heard you talk about this.
Yes,
yeah.
and it's this idea that you don't you don't gain an appreciation from nature or an appreciation of nature by experiencing loads of different ecosystems and traveling the world and seeing all these different places.
Yeah.
You gain an appreciation of nature by coming and sitting in one place and observing like change in one specific environment.
Yeah.
So this is what this man did in the documentary, was he visited the same rock pool every day for hours for like 2 months or something, and documented the life of this octopus.
Yeah.
But like we could come and sit here. We're surrounded by wild garlic now at the end of April, but it wouldn't be like this in December. It wouldn't be like this kind of any other day. Actually, it'll never be exactly like this. Like there's constant change. I like that as an idea.
And I think like you could do that on the micro and the macro scale, because like all of my quote unquote big projects since 2017 have all been Ireland based. I have spent so much time like across but the island of Ireland itself, like if you take it on like a world view, it is quite a small place. So I think possibly my environmentalist streak or whatever was compounded because it wasn't necessarily this forest, but it was the island of Ireland that I was spending thousands of hours in constantly. So why wouldn't I fall in love with it and want to? Yeah,
well, you sort of touched on the idea that there's more than one of these mad big projects that you've done, and the other one was the Vandeleur Linum list, obviously, which quite a lot of people will have heard of.
Yes.
And be aware that that's what you did. It was 2023. Summer of 2023, wettest summer ever. Ellie decided to climb, I just like saying all the mountains in Ireland because that just sounds really cool.
It sounds good.
But it's all the mountains that meet a certain standard on the Vandeleur Linum list. 275 mountains in how many days?
50 days, 5 hours and 45 minutes.
So quite different to a 2.5 year project or a 2 year project that the original one was. These are kind of the two big projects, I would say. Like there's lots of other things that you've done, but these are kind of the two big projects. If you were to compare and contrast them, if you were to see similarities, like there's obvious differences that we've already touched on in terms of like the length it took to do them, but like trails, you're very confined to a specific channel that has been engineered for people to go along. Whereas quite a lot of these Vandeleur Linums, you're kind of figuring out what's the most efficient way yourself of going up these mountains. So without me talking too much more on it, when you're thinking about if you were to compare and contrast those two projects, what sort of springs to mind?
Well, I guess, comparison is that like deep immersion, because I was eat, sleep, living the mountain, the bog, a little too literally sometimes. So that level of immersion was definitely, I guess, what drew me back, or what will always kind of pull me back. There is nothing like just being in a project or whatever you want to call it, being in a time outdoors where that is all you are doing, and life becomes so simple. You're just focused on whatever it is that you're doing, and it doesn't matter if it's fast or slow, but that just becomes your world. And suddenly you're like, I was stressed about the idea of an email. Like, that is ridiculous. Like, I should be stressed about getting off this mountain before the lightning comes in. Like, that's an actual worry. An email is not. That's a bit of a tangent.
No, not at all.
Differences, is probably that forced level of intensity. Like, I think there's a point in 2017 when we first started walking that we realised we weren't going to get all 4,000 done in one go. And we were kind of glad, because sometimes you get to a place and you'd realise that it was kind of special, and so you're like, you know what, we're going to take a rest day here and we're going to experience it a bit more and a bit deeper, whereas there wasn't that for the mountains. And I think there's pros and cons to both variations. Like, I really, really loved both projects, and think it was finding that balance as well, because I'm not a record going like speed focused person.
Sure.
That
miles per hour, not miles per hour.
I need to get that on a t-shirt. Exactly. If I make Tough Souls merch of that,
Get a kickback.
So the idea, but it just seemed like a cool thing to try and do. Try and do all the mountains in a new record time. Because I had a friend that had been considering doing it, and then he decided it wasn't for him, and then Carl was like, I think you should give it a go. And so, yeah, I definitely really enjoyed the format. I don't know if speed is the goal for me in future projects. Or maybe if it is, it's that similar thing of it's the journey, not the destination.
Yeah.
Like if I want to go for another record or whatever, I think it will always be the journey. So unless the journey's worth it, like for me, it was the idea of having seen, because what's actually so trails in Ireland don't go over 500 meters. I think the Wicklow Way does, but like there's a couple of the classic, the old trails are grandfathered in, and they're too iconic now to change, but they're not allowed over 500. I
didn't know that. That's
yeah. Wow. Pretty sure. I'm saying that.
But
I'm saying that
it does
confidently
actually
now.
check out though.
But if it's not 500, there is a number that they are kind of kept below.
At, yeah.
So like this was just like so if you kind of imagine just like slicing everything above 550 meters off of Ireland. Like I'd experienced a lot of below, but I hadn't experienced this like whole top half. Like if you can imagine.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so it was like just a whole new world in a way that I hadn't really seen. So I was going back to all these areas that I knew like really, really well, because it had taken me a week to go through like one corner of it. And now I was getting to like run around and play.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I like that. Like one of the things I was thinking about before this, and it's probably something we've talked about before as well, is that surely you have seen the most of Ireland of kind of anybody, like, or a very, like you're definitely in a small group of people that have seen a humongous amount of Ireland that the vast majority of people maybe would never see or have never seen. So what have you learned about Ireland from walking through random towns on Waymarked trails and like crossing little rivers that, or like sinking into bog holes that nobody else has ever sunk into? Like what have you learned about Ireland?
So the like one deep cliche that I always kind of repeat is that like we are a really friendly bunch. Like it felt weird to actually experience so much niceness. We're all just very sound. Like no matter where we went, like I can think of a handful of weird or awkward conversations out of like years, like years and years of time outdoors. So like on a whole, we are like people in Ireland are really, really nice. I had thought of something else that I've now forgotten.
I think we're very, like, this was something that Jan McManus said on one of the episodes that we put out with him, was that like when you've been abroad and you've spent a lot of time somewhere very, very different to Ireland and you come back to Ireland, it really highlights how amazing Ireland is and like how good we have it.
Yeah.
And I think like when I talk about outdoor access, I'm not necessarily talking about infrastructure and stuff like that, even though I think it's very good. Like I think that like the outdoor access is amazing. Like you can kind of, with obvious outliers for safety reasons, you can kind of go outdoors and have some kind of outdoor adventure most days in Ireland throughout the year, with obvious outliers. But like that's just not the case in a lot of these, like whenever people think about outdoor destinations, people think about the really hardcore places like Chamonix or like these sorts of places.
Yeah.
But in reality, a lot of the people that go to these hardcore places aren't doing the hardcore things. So that makes the outdoors in Ireland like actually perfect for spending time outdoors. Like,
Yeah.
and I think we're very fortunate to have that. Like,
yeah. Like I feel like everyone should kind of like gain a basic knowledge of like outdoor education or whatever you want to call it for going outside in Ireland. But in general, the knowledge bar is very low. Like you don't need to know how to use an ice axe, like to do anything in Ireland, or whatever. You don't need to get walking ropes like you might do depending on what route you're doing in Chamonix.
Have you ever thought about how people talk about like I've been to Norway and like the Alps and stuff like this, and people talk about the people in these places having an intrinsic appreciation of their outdoor spaces. And I don't know if that's the same in Ireland. Have you ever thought about?
So I think like COVID really changed things. Like when you look at the CSO, like the statistics for how many people got into the outdoors then because they were looking for a thing to kind of keep them active, sane, connected, whatever, is phenomenal. Because, I think the outdoors was it was a minority beforehand of like users. And so we're in like a kind of like a teething phase. No, we're a toddler phase. Like if you take 2020 as the year of Irish outdoors becoming mainstream, that means it's 5 years old. Like people have not had as much time to learn what might be standard practice or like embedded in cultures in other places. Because I don't think like, yes, you can get out nearly every single day in Ireland. The rain is not always. That said, the rain is there.
Yeah.
So it's not always the most inviting. Like, I guess this all circles back around to like the Camino for Carl and myself was such an accessible way to get into the outdoors because it was so consistent weather-wise. Like, I had a Mac in a sack that I used twice, and we were there for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, so it, like that comfort level really helps when you want to get outdoors. I would love for every Irish person to own a waterproof jacket.
Yeah, it's wild that they don't.
Yeah.
I used to work in an outdoor shop, and I had this realization on a lunch break once. I just thought, surely everyone has a rain jacket by now. Like, I've sold so many rain jackets. Surely everyone has one. Like, but no, apparently not.
No. Yeah. So yeah, I think we're shifting towards a much more outdoor focused and outdoor minded culture, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Like it's really nice to see. So yeah, like with charity outdoor awareness education work I've done, there's kind of a couple of different like extremes. So sometimes you go into schools and the level of outdoor nature related content that you learn at a young age can actually be quite high. Like they know about badgers and their sets, and like that a baby swan is a signet, and like you learn all this kind of stuff at that age in most places. That's just kind of like there isn't a continuation through or a through line. And then so I'd meet people that we'd be doing these corporate days of like giving back to the outdoors, and you bring them into an environment exactly like this, and you'd be doing whatever. But I'd always try and incorporate, let's say we're going to do a tree ID survey. We're going to do the canopy and the floor, and we're going to have all these ID guides. We're going to identify what we have and everything. And there'd be a woman, like, who's 40, who's ID'd this tree and is ecstatic because now she knows that she has beech trees in her garden. And she has like no connection to nature other than that. And so sometimes people would be like, oh, do you not feel a bit cynical, you know, doing these kind of corporate, like, learn about nature days? And I'm like, no, they're the most impactful because these people are there to get a day off from their normal job. They're not actually that interested in the outdoors. So when you see that moment for them of being like, oh, I see it now, or like those small, like they were the best.
And you have then there's a connection.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone recently, and we were sort of having a little bit of a debate back and forth about whether we're better to continue to, like, is it better to introduce more people into the outdoors, like continue to ramp up the and encourage people outdoors, get outdoors. Yeah. And then once they've had a positive outdoor experience, then they might educate themselves, or they'll be more receptive to being educated about the outdoors. Yeah. But the disadvantage is, the more people you introduce into the outdoors, the more damage, the more negative things that are associated with that. Yeah. And I don't think there's a simple answer to this, but it's a tricky one, because if you come at it from a conservationist's point of view, limiting human activity is kind of the best thing for nature. Yeah. But in some ways, but if you come at it from people's mental health point of view, obviously getting more people outdoors is a positive thing. So it's this difficult dance of like, how much human activity is too much. And that's why I think it's amazing, like even places like this that have put in good hard-wearing trails that will limit the negative sort of effects of human activity as much as is possible. And having these amazing big places like the new trails around the Spink in Glendalough, and like hundreds of thousands of people doing that walk every year. It's better them do that than doing Tonlagee and shredding that mountain. But it is this difficult sort of balance.
Conservation costs money. And so if there's more people who are in love with the outdoors, they're more likely to donate and fund towards it. At the moment, in this mindset today, I am on team get everybody outside. And we'll figure it out as we go. And I think that if people go outside and fall in love with the outdoors, they will be inspired to protect it.
I mean, that's certainly what happened with you.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's what's happened with me and a lot of the people that we both spend a lot of time with. Yeah. So I think I agree with you. Yeah. It's
really interesting as well, like trail development. So like throughout my whole journey in the outdoors, like I've gotten to know a lot of the guys who build trails, or who are instrumental in like the funding or the management or whatever of all these different trail networks, and learned so much behind like how a trail actually gets to be there, which is so much work, so wild. But even like the amount of thought and consideration that is done into how a trail looks and feels and how you interact with it, because you were talking about Killarney National Park earlier. They've built trails there that you'll come to a junction, and the shorter, more easily accessible loop turns left and will bring you back to the car park in 1,500 meters or whatever. And the slightly more difficult trail goes right. Now it's not, and let's say it's 3k to get to the car park. It's not a hugely more difficult trail, but it is a step up. So they will build the trail with a natural barrier there. So it might be that there's a large boulder there that you have to kind of like step on to continue on. Like they will use the natural landscape to funnel people, to help them choose what is more within their ability range. And even just like when you start considering things on that level, you're like, so I think that if everyone's pushed, like if we were like, okay, everybody go outside and learn, like we do have a lot of stuff that is built for different tiers. We're not perfect. There's a lot of infrastructure that still needs to go in, I think. And a lot of mountains that need to be preserved, and it's a whole balancing act. But
I think one thing that was actually Mel McDermott of Gals Gone Wild said on an interview that I did with her years ago was, and I think it sort of still rings true mostly, is that one of the main barriers to entry in the outdoors is that initial hurdle that you're sort of confronted with when you're like, okay, how do I outdoors? Like how do I actually, like, where people say, let's go for a hike, what does that mean? Like, that initial barrier for entry is really that's kind of the main barrier. And once you're over that, it's behind you and you can kind of figure out your own outdoor journey from there, sort of thing, if that makes sense. But and that sort of speaks to what you're saying there.
But the entry point as well, getting that initial, like knowing how to find what trails are near you and stuff. The analogy that I like to use for like finding trails, as a side tangent, is that like similar to weather apps in Ireland. Like I have like 3 or 4 or 5 different weather apps on my phone. I kind of look at them all, and on some days I'm like, I'm gonna go with the more positive forecast. That's just gonna make me feel better. But I'm aware that there are some negative forecasts as well. You know, like having that holistic approach for weather apps is great, but also for hiking apps or like hiking information in general. So what actually was part of the inspiration for how Tough Souls the project has been shaped is that when we started walking in 2017, we would go to a page about a trail, and at the top of the page it would have like a short summary. So it would be like distance 30k, like elevation, amount of time, blah blah blah, blah, start point, end point, and then we'd scroll down to the like bigger description and be reading through, and it'd be like this 57 kilometer trail, blah 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, which one is it? Is it the 30 kilometer trail you said at the top, or 57 down here? And so because the Irish outdoors has been smaller and more niche, there are still a lot of mistakes like that out there. So part of what we tried to do with Tough Souls was to give a free access to that info of like what we personally experienced. Because as far as we know, nobody else has walked all of these trails. So at least we are a one-stop shop for like, this is how all of them feel comparatively. Okay, so a real tangent that I don't think I've talked about before is that when we started Tough Souls, we talked to some guys who worked in the Trails office at the time, and they gave us a report that they had commissioned and asked about the National Waymarked Trails in Ireland, and asked us to come back with notes and verify the report on the trails.
Wow. And
so after each trail we would because the thing is with those kind of reports and stuff, they're awarded to like a company, and then they get contractors then to go out and do all like different areas. So one contractor might do 3 trails over here, another one might do ones over there. But like the outdoors is such a personal experience that somebody would write up about a trail being like, oh, that was amazing, absolutely beautiful. And they walked it on like the perfect day, and they actually really love road walking, and they like X and they like Y. So that trail was perfect for them. And then somebody would write a scathing review of a trail over somewhere else, which is actually, in my opinion, a great trail. Like I love being like wild on the side of a mountain. Like, yes, please. And so for a while, we would, after we finished a trail, we'd email in being like, we agree or disagree with X and Y that was written about this trail. Eventually, people in the Trails office moved on to other jobs and stuff, so we didn't get to submit a report to them for all of them. But I think this is an outsider exclusive. I don't think I've talked about this before.
Yeah, that's
cool. So I think to loop it the whole way back, that when you're looking for trails, or I'm going to use trails specifically because this is what I'm most knowledgeable on, is to compare and contrast as many resources as you can. So you have the Sport Ireland Outdoors website, you have Get Ireland Active, you have the Hiker app, you have Outdoor Active, you have places like Tough Souls where we give away free maps. Compare all 5 and get your average. So across the average of all these different places, the average distance for the trail is 12k. So it's probably going to be 12k, and it's probably going to be X and Y. And that's still how I assess trails when I'm going out to do new trails. for Tough Souls, because there's still those inconsistencies. And it's nobody is perfect. Like, trails are such fluid things. Like, the landscape changes, nature changes, the trails have to change. I went and did the Cavan Way recently, and that route had changed. I got to a junction that I was expecting to turn, like, I had the GPS file on my watch, I had the maps on my phone, I was expecting to turn left. The trail goes right now, and goes through a completely different loop and adds like 2k onto the trail. Absolutely gorgeous. But I stood there for a minute being like, well, but I know that, like, historically the trail went that way. Like, should I still go that way?
Yeah.
No, the trail now goes this way.
Yeah.
And I met the landowner who owns the land that the trail now goes through, and we had a great conversation. And I said thank you at the end, to be like, oh yeah, like, is this your land? He's like, oh yeah, it is, yeah. And I'm like, oh, like, thanks so much for having the trail. He's like, oh sure, you know, like, very, very classic. I cannot do a Cavan accent, so I'm not even trying. But like, Irish farmer, like, in his 80s to a T, nicest man. But I'm so glad I, like, had that interaction with him. And yeah, so trails change all the time. So I was expecting it to be whatever distance trail is shifted because the trail has had to change because of whatever reasons, who knows why.
But the connection from finding that connection between people and place as well is really is really, like, nice as well, to be like, yes, I'm literally going through someone's land here. Like, it was the same. I was literally at the weekend, I was out in the west of Ireland, and I was along the Western Way, and there's one or two points where it's very obvious that, like, a farmer now has a field there, and it, like, that maybe he wasn't grazing before. So there's these two gates that are brand new, has changed sort of the way that the trail flows a little bit, which is So it's all that pre-research, but also being prepared and just going out and having your own experience as well. Yeah, because no matter how much you prepare, you're going to have to also be flexible and just adapt to what's around you. So yeah, it's the balance. Maybe people ask you this question a lot, but these two big projects, do you have anything big in mind that you want to talk about or not talk about? You could just hint at something. And anything not so big that you also have planned that you're sort of looking forward to in an outdoor sense over the next little while? Yeah, well, I'm about to go to Spain with my dad to walk the Camino Frances, which is either going to be the most wholesome, corny, like, father-daughter adventure, or it will be an adventure. And either one I'm excited for. It's something that he's wanted to do for a long time, and I'm excited to do it with him. We'll see what happens with that one. This year really is a little bit of a loose ends list year. So, like, as we kind of alluded to earlier, there are new trails on the National Waymarked Trails Registry that I haven't done, that I would like to do, just to kind of keep that, like, list ticked off. For Tough Souls, we had started making and documenting, like, videos and write-ups of all the different county high points. We only got about halfway through those, so I'd like to finish those off this year. And then there are some trails, like the Bangor Trail that I just mentioned. That's not actually a National Waymarked Trail, but it's of the same calibre. And I've kind of had a few of those trails that are around the country on my mind to do, because they fit with everything else. So yeah, this year is very much a kind of cleaning up here and figuring out what the next big project is. Cool. Yeah. Well, people can follow along. All the links and stuff will be in the description of the podcast. But thanks very much for joining me. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks very much for listening to that episode of the Outsider podcast. I hope you got something from it. As I said at the outset, I thoroughly enjoyed that chat with Ellie. I feel like it was quite broad, and we covered quite a lot of interesting topics and sort of perspectives on outdoor recreation and the outdoors in Ireland that maybe don't get the airtime they deserve. I thought it was a really useful chat and a really enjoyable one to have. So I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much for your support of the podcast so far. We're thoroughly enjoying putting these together and having some conversations. Our inbox is always open over on Instagram if you have suggestions of guests or topics you'd like us to discuss on the podcast. And as I said at the outset, it would mean the world if you could share this episode or any of the other episodes with friends, or share one of the clips that we post on social media. That would mean the world and help us to grow this podcast as we continue to try and bring you some interesting conversations about the Irish outdoors from a variety of different voices. Thanks very much, and talk to you soon.